There you go. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for coming on. If you guys know Rachel, she goes by Ribeye Rachel. She has an awesome channel that she just started and a really cool Instagram channel. And I really connected with her because we have a lot of similar health conditions. And I really just want to chat with you today about leaky gut, your autoimmune conditions, and what you've been going through and the diet that you switched over to. So can you give me just a brief rundown as to the health conditions that you're going through right now and how you sort of discovered that you had all these health conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of my life I was pretty healthy, but for the last 5 years or so, I have been severely ill. And before I became sick, I was very active. So at the time, I was in college and I was a rock climber. That was my passion. So I was rock climbing instructor and I worked at a climbing gym and got to climb in lots of cool places around the world and in different states all over the US too. And so I think it was in 2016. Yeah, 2016. I, at some point while I was training and climbing, doing my usual thing, I started getting really dizzy while I was exercising. And that was something that was not normal for me. And then I started getting throbbing headaches, and I kind of just thought I was coming down with something, but it turned out to be something that just kept getting worse and wasn't going away. And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't exercise anymore. I had to take a break from school. I was struggling to just like get up and cook a meal and take a shower, simple things like that. And so I, after like, 3 or 4 weeks of that, I was like, well, I guess I have to go see a doctor and, try to figure out what's going on. And so that at some point, a couple months later, I was diagnosed with POTS, which is a form of dysautonomia. And so basically the gist of that is like when you're standing or sitting up, your heart rate goes up really high, and that can cause a whole myriad of symptoms. And at that point, we thought that was kind of like the root of everything, that was the condition that I had, and we had to figure out how to manage it. But as time went on, I kind of got more. As time went on, I saw more doctors and was diagnosed with a whole host of other conditions, and I tried all sorts of treatments and um, surgeries. Even I've had 5 brain and neurosurgeries uh, in the past 3 years or so. And so I was diagnosed with intracranial hypertension, which is like high pressure in the brain, and that took them a while to figure out. But I had a lot of spinal taps, which are not fun. And I had actually stents placed in like the veins of my brain. So I have like 3 stents in my head. And then they found that my cervical was so unstable that it was compressing my brainstem. And I was having all sorts of crazy neurological symptoms like seizure-like episodes and difficulty walking, just like severe pain, and just was not functioning at that point. At that point, I already had to quit my job, and I was, close to close to bedbound at that point. And so they decided that they needed to fuse my skull to my C2. So I have nice big rods and screws connecting the bottom of my skull to C2. And that surgery helped a little bit, like briefly, but overall it didn't really like help my quality of life like I was hoping. At that same time, at that surgery, they also like shaved a piece of my skull off to try to decompress the brain for the Chiari malformation. And so those surgeries really didn't like take me where I was hoping for. I still had about the same quality of life. And then at some point a couple of years ago, I had someone mention like, "Oh, have you ever been tested for Lyme disease?" And I said no. And so I found a naturopath and they diagnosed me with Lyme disease, but they started me on some treatments for Lyme that really, really flared up my symptoms with like a die-off-Herxheimer sort of reaction. And so at that point, I became the sickest that I had ever been, and I was bedbound. Every single day, I felt like I was dying. Just like sitting up for a conversation with somebody could send me into uncontrollable shaking episodes. Just like the light and noise, like small noises could just like trigger crazy neurological symptoms. And it was just like, I mean, there's really not a better way to, to describe it than it was like I was living in hell.
How long
But
did that go on for?
sorry, what
How
was
long
that?
did that go on for?
That went on for about 3 or 4 months. And at the time, my family was, we felt good about the Lyme diagnosis, but we didn't feel good about that doctor that had diagnosed it. And they also had me on steroids, which is terrible for chronic infections. And I think really made my infection rage. Um,
Mhm.
that's a whole another story. But uh, so we found another doctor that was a Lyme disease doctor, and we felt good about him and started treatment with him. And at that point, I think he might have saved my life. So the Lyme treatment did eventually help. I did it for about a year and a half, and that kind of got me out of the like extreme bed bounds phase of like just the worst imaginable symptoms, and got me to a point where I was feeling like I wasn't in an emergency 24/7 with my health, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but at that point, I felt like I was like, like I'm still really sick. Like I and I'm thankful that this has helped, but I just don't know how much more it's going to help if I just continue with this treatment. So I had been doing like a combination of antibiotics and like natural Lyme treatments, like herbs like oregano and cemento and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And so I decided to take a break from those treatments, and I heard about the carnivore diet a couple of times, and it was interesting is because I did a lot of research over all of these years of being really sick, just because I was desperate to heal, which I think is pretty typical. And I never once came across the carnivore diet. Um, so so sorry, sometimes I get brain fog moments.
No, I know what that's all about.
Yes. But someone in the Lyme community had said that all of their chronic pain went away after they did the carnivore diet. And I had heard like years ago, my brother-in-law told me about Michaela Peterson and how she put her rheumatoid arthritis into remission with only eating beef. And I thought that was cool, but I was like, that doesn't apply to my situation. And, the typical response. And didn't really think much further at that point, but it planted a seed. And so I'm thankful for that. I wish I had looked more into it at the time, but then I started researching more and more about the carnivore diet. I like was digging deep into Facebook group archives, and just I was amazed at the stories that I found of healing of just like any chronic condition you could ever think of almost. And so I was really nervous to try it because I was in such a vulnerable state at that point where I was like, I can't tolerate getting worse. And so I was worried that trying the diet would potentially make me worse. And so it took me like a month of like constantly just researching carnivore and talking to people who had done it and all of those things before I was ready to jump into it myself. And so at some point I was just like, all right, like this seems like it's really promising and I will always wonder if I don't give it a try. So that's kind of how I came to the carnivore way of eating. That was last August. So it's getting close to 6 months that I've been on carnivore. I originally planned on starting like the lion diet, which is the stricter version of carnivore with just essentially beef, salt, and water, but other ruminant animals included as well. And so for a couple months, I did the regular carnivore diet. It was mostly beef, like I would say like 95% plus beef. And then after that, I transitioned to the strict lion diet. And I think it was good for me in the beginning to start with a little bit of dairy and a little bit of chicken and pork here and there, just to help me like get used to the lifestyle and all those things. But yeah, it's definitely changed my life. And I feel like it's one of those things where like when I was researching, a lot of people seem to really claim to heal within a month or two. And so I was hoping to see really quick results. But for me, it's been very gradual. And I'm still really sick. But I'm so much better, if that makes sense.
No, I know
But
that's part of the reason why I felt like I could connect with you so much, right? So you do hear a lot of the stories. I've talked about this in my previous videos about, you hear about all these success stories of people healing within a matter of weeks or whatever.
right,
I do have to question sometimes. I hate to sound like a jerk, but I do have to question sometimes, how sick those people could have been. I mean, if you've been really sick for years and years and decades, you don't just heal overnight. It doesn't work like
right, right.
that. So typically like those people might have something to sell or affiliate programs or something, right? That's from my experience.
Yeah. But I think
But
even like I think even like everybody's different in their
yeah,
healing process.
yeah,
And
that's true.
some people might just get lucky
Yeah,
and
that's
heal
true.
a little faster than others. But I think if
For
it's a
sure.
really complex issue, then
Yeah.
something that's very severe and complex,
Yeah.
it's going to take time.
Yeah, I think a
And
lot of people with severe leaky gut, like, the myriad of symptoms that you discuss, like, as far as I'm concerned, they all sort of fall under the umbrella of leaky gut. I see all these people I meet and
mhm,
they have a whole host of thyroid issues and other autoimmune type conditions and arthritis and blah, blah, blah. And really the root cause is the same thing, right? It's all leaky gut, right? And I think that for a lot of people, it could take years to completely heal. Some people
yeah,
might be a certain amount of time. It really depends on how you adhere to the diet as well. I really believe in like therapeutic ketosis. So as we discussed earlier, I'm really on the PKD paleomedicina route / GAPS and having that kind of
right.
synergistic approach to healing. But not everyone needs that, right? Some people might do
Yes.
fine. Yeah, some people might do fine with just carnivore and eating dairy and, you know,
Yeah. And some people heal on just regular keto or
yeah, it
ketogore.
really depends on the person, but for some people they just might need that extra bit of adherence to the diet, or they might need a stricter version of it, or whatever to help seal that leaky gut and get rid of their SIBO and candida and what other
Absolutely.
pathogenic overgrowths that they might have, right? So I'm just kind of curious, what do you think it is that set off all this to begin with? Do you think it was a Lyme that started it off, or do you think that you had
Mhm,
leaky gut? Like, could you pinpoint something like antibiotics or maybe chronic stress or poor diet? Is there something that maybe
mhm.
set all this off to begin with?
Well, I've wondered about this a lot, but I would say, I mean, I think the Lyme probably contributed. So when I was in high school, I was sick for about a year, not nearly as severe as I've gotten in these last years, but at that point I was diagnosed with celiac and they tested me for tick-borne diseases and I actually tested positive, but they were like, "Oh, you don't remember a tick bite, like we're not going to treat you." And all those things. So I think there's a possibility that something kind of started back then, but I I think it's more than that. I think that it potentially was. So when I was in college, I don't know, you know how like no almost no college students eat well. Like I I was eating obviously strict gluten free because I had celiac. That was something that was non-negotiable for me, obviously. But I, I was eating ice cream and eating, you know, things a lot of carbs and grains and things like that. Not like horrible in, you know, standard American diet terms, but I would say pretty bad. Um, and I was really pushing my body to the limits with climbing, with traveling, skiing, hiking. I was not getting much sleep. I was just constantly on to the next adventure. And so I think maybe just that stress of pushing my body so hard when not fueling it properly could have really weakened my immune system to kind of let those chronic infections start to take over.
Yeah. And so you said that, you are feeling better, but you're still
Mhm.
sick.
Yeah.
So what have kind of been your worst symptoms throughout the years? Like, are there a sort of a predominant
Yeah.
subset of symptoms that seem to linger or not really lit up for you? Or
Yes. So I would say severe pressure headaches and migraines, light and noise sensitivity. So it's hard for me to be around people and be around noises because that is a trigger for my symptoms. When I was at my worst, I like really most of the time couldn't sit up for like a family dinner or something like that. It just could send me into what would look like a seizure almost. And so just that overstimulation has been something that has been a huge symptom for me. But the other would be fatigue. So, and that's something that I would say has improved the most on carnivore has been my fatigue. And my fatigue was so severe that I was essentially bedridden, but even when I was out of that totally bedridden phase where I was out of bed, like, maybe 2 to 3 hours a day, I like if I overdid it, which was very easy to do, you know, with where I was at, the next day or two, I would be in bed with like and it's like it's hard to explain like if somebody hasn't experienced it before, but like a fatigue crash that like I would dread rolling over in bed, like because it was just the fatigue was so crushing. And that has been a huge symptom for me. It's still a big symptom for me. And so but it's improved so much and my crashes have improved a lot. I recover a lot faster if I overdo it. So
okay. And you mentioned like you have brain fog and all the
yes.
other common
Yes.
neurological and sort of physical symptoms that go along with these conditions, right?
Right. Yeah. So in flare ups, I wouldn't be able to like really process like trying to read or
Mm.
whatever it might be was really difficult. And sometimes it still can be difficult at this point, but it's gotten a lot better. So,
Okay. And just touching on the Lyme, I should have asked this earlier, but in terms of the Lyme treatment,
mhm.
was that a sort of a pharmaceutical approach or a dietary approach? What was your treatment?
Yeah. So it was a mix. So I did take antibiotics, like pharmaceutical antibiotics, like tetracycline or doxycycline. I also took some things like fluconazole or um,
So
I'm trying.
fluconazole, I mean, that's for candida, is it not?
Yeah.
So part of that
Um,
I guess they all sort of come together, especially if you,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think candida is definitely an issue for me. Um, but is candida yeast? Is that the same
yeah, it's a type
thing? Okay.
of yeast.
Yeah.
Candida, I think, is the most um, predominant type of yeast that overgrows when you have something like leaky gut, especially if you have SIBO. I think
Okay.
the connection that I've researched is that methane, SIBO, and candida especially go really hand in hand together. So,
Okay. That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because when I started carnivore, after about a week, I got really bad like thrush in my throat.
Hmm.
And I think that was from some sort of die-off reaction. Um, I don't know. It's hard to know the difference
Yeah, no,
sometimes.
I know it's hard to know the difference between just getting worse and die off, right? But
But I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm not feeding this. I'm having zero carbs. Why am I getting, how is it even possible that I have thrush right now? But I think it was
oh
just a
yeah,
die-off sort of thing.
that's very common with candida die off, actually, is thrush. I had it even.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, because I mean, typically, a lot of people say ketones or whatever feeds candida. I haven't experienced that myself. I think that um, candida feeds primarily just off of carbs and sugars. So, and it doesn't really
Okay.
differentiate between what type of carbs. I think that's sort of an old myth that people think they could get away with eating oatmeal and
Yeah.
but not candy. Or I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they sort of feed off of any and all carbs. But
Okay.
yeah, candida is such a terrible thing, and I think that most people with leaky gut have some form of candida overgrowth. Um,
Okay.
but so the die off from that was that all you have as a thrush, or did you have other die off symptoms?
I did. I had gosh, well, I don't know what how you would tell the difference between die-off symptoms or transitions or
Right.
oxalates, but I got little like bug bite sort of rash like things all over my legs
Yeah.
and arms, which was strange. And those lasted for like months.
Mhm.
And I got, I mean, I had an increase in overall symptoms as well, which I expected with, transitioning from carbs to fats.
Yeah.
But I had really low blood sugars in the beginning. And that was something, the first week I had a little bit of honey here and there just to kind of keep it safe. But blood sugar has evened out now. So that's something that resolved. I feel like it's one of those things where like I mean, I didn't expect the results to be quick. Like after all the research I did, like I really started to believe in this way of healing.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of tried to trust the process. And I think, when especially when you're really sick and you're having to be really restricted with your diet and that sort of thing, it's hard to keep going when you're not seeing the results that you're looking for. And but I just really felt like I needed to give it a good try. And obviously here I still am. I at first I was kind of just like, okay, I'll try it for like 4 to 6 weeks and then reassess. But now I'm like, nope, like this is a lifestyle I'm gonna continue for a very long time, potentially forever. So
Yeah, absolutely. So now you're kind of going into more of a restrictive diet with the Lion diet.
yeah.
So, first off, how long have you been on the Lion diet, and how long do you intend on being on it to see if if that will sort of be the fix for you in terms of healing?
Yeah. So I've been on the lion diet for 3.5 months and um so I think coming upon 4 months here soon.
Mhm.
So to be honest, I didn't see a huge difference in the results I saw from carnivore to when I transitioned into lion. And but I did notice that I just in general like the way I reacted to foods like after eating, it seemed like was a little better, especially after I started eating unaged beef and lamb and goat and all those things. But
So the
it's
histamine reactions, like a lot of the component to your symptoms is histamine, then I'm assuming. So the symptoms,
potentially I sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like it's
It's so hard to know when
yeah.
you're not sick. And trust me, I've been there because
Yeah, especially when people say like, "Oh, well, you could have a delayed reaction up to like 3 days." It's like, "All right, great. Well, like, how am I supposed
exactly.
to like,
It's funny.
how am I supposed to know?"
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Just like anecdotally speaking, like I went to my friend's place the other day, and it's very rare I eat anywhere outside of my own house. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, he had chicken skins, right? And
Okay.
I was like, they look so good. How do you stop yourself
Yeah.
from eating chicken skins? Like you can't say
Yeah.
that, right? That's why I would never buy it because I would just eat like the whole thing. But he had
Yes.
chicken skins. I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna do it, whatever. And then, I expected within an hour I was gonna feel like crap. But I was like, I didn't feel like crap. I actually felt fine. And then a couple days later, out of nowhere, I got hit with like the worst symptoms I'd had in like months.
Wow.
So I really do believe that there can be that like histamine bucket, you know,
Yeah.
there could be that delayed reaction for a few days. And anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just warning people with histamine intolerance that
Yeah, I know. And
maybe
that's
it was
something that
chicken
I'm
skin.
very determined to heal because I'm just like, I'm sorry, like I'm not gonna buy unaged beef and cook it from frozen for the rest of my life. Like, especially because I like don't even feel good. Like I still feel really sick. And
Yeah.
so I'm just like, if I was feeling great and like outliving my life and that was like the one thing I needed to do to be better, then I'd be like, sure, like I could do that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But
I would
obviously there's still something wrong.
I
So,
think like yeah, when you get to a certain point of sickness, like you'd eat white dog shit to to get some help, right? And to heal.
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But if you could get rid of any symptoms, like what are the worst
Mhm,
symptoms you're dealing with right now? And I hate to, you know,
mhm.
I, I know a lot of people get like PTSD when they talk about all the suffering that they have to go through, but I think this
Yeah.
is sort of just essential to go through some of this for people because they really
Yeah, for sure. So some of them, some like my very worst symptoms that I've experienced in this journey have thankfully mostly gone away,
yeah.
and others have not. So the ones that are still around, I would say fatigue. I still feel just like that very heavy, like just it's just hard to like move sort of fatigue,
Mhm.
but like I said, it has much improved. And then I would say dizziness. I get dizzy when I stand for long periods of time. So I think something that people may not realize, like about me, like just looking looking at me, seeing, thinking that I look just fine, but like if I can't walk more than like a block without using a wheelchair still.
Mm.
So that's kind of like an indicator of like where I'm at. I really would love to be able to get back to moving and exercising a lot more because that was something that was very important to me,
Yeah.
something that I miss a lot. Um, and then I would say my migraine and neck instability symptoms are just debilitating. So that's something that I would love to get rid of.
Yeah. So okay. So what's your goal then with like in terms of time frame and the diet and stuff? Are you planning on staying on this long term? Are you planning on changing things up? I know I was trying to
Yeah.
convince you. I've been pressuring you
Yeah,
a little bit to do. I want somebody to do the PKD diet with me. So if any,
yeah, it sounds cool. It
yeah, if any of
sounds
you want to
sounds
do
promising.
yeah, if any of you want to do the PKD diet with me, I just started it really strict like a couple days ago now. So anyone who wants to hop on board with me and do this challenge, I'm going to try and stick out for at least 2 months. Really, really strict.
Okay.
I listened to, by the way, and maybe I'll get into another video of what PKD is, but it's paleo medicina. It's a type of diet. It's a paleolithic ketogenic diet. So you go into a therapeutic level of ketosis. You have to cut out dairy. You have to cut out supplements. So it's definitely a very strict version, not super easy to adhere to. But
Right.
I've just been blown away by all of the stories that have come out there from people I've talked to about that diet. So that's why I'm giving it a go because I feel like I'm at that point now where it's like I've tried everything else.
Yeah.
I'm willing to try whatever it takes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like for me, to be quite honest, like I don't think just the Lion diet is going to do it for me. Like, I don't see, you know, I've been very, very strict. Like, I haven't deviated from carnivore once. And then once I started Lion, I didn't deviate at all, not even once. And so I just feel like there's more that needs to happen. So I've been experimenting. I've been researching, you know, the GAPS diet, which I don't plan to, you know, if I did a GAPS sort of diet, it would definitely be a plant-free GAPS diet. So carnivore GAPS, and higher fat than I think most people on GAPS do. But I'm just trying to keep an open mind and just try to keep learning as much as I can, because you know, like when you're desperate and you just want quality of life back, it's like you're willing to do anything. But I think that sometimes, you know, in really complex, serious cases, like a carnivore isn't going to just heal everyone. I think it's an important step for me. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle, and it's not something that I'm going to just stop. Like, I believe in it and I'm going to keep doing it, but I think I need something more. So I'm definitely interested in looking into this PKD diet that you've been telling me about. And I've been trying to incorporate meat stock, which is a concept from the GAPS diets. And I just feel like my gut is still just a complete wreck.
Yes.
And it's kind of discouraging because I feel like everywhere I see in the carnivore community, it's like your gut should be like golden and good to go after 4 to 6 weeks. And that's like 90% of people. But then there's still that minority of people that just continue to have issues. And I think it's really just because we haven't healed from all the damage that's been done for our entire life.
Yeah. Well, you know, I talked to JC, who goes under the handle Lady Carnivore. I had her on my channel.
Okay.
Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, I actually watched that.
Yeah. Oh, you watched? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's great. And we talked about in the video about toxic positivity, right? Which
Hmm. Hmm.
it sounds like maybe a little bit asshole-ish, whatever. But I'll just say that, you know, it's there's a point where, you know, you're watching this stuff and coming from the perspective of somebody who's been sick for a long time, where all these people are just kind of writing their success stories after a week and saying like, oh, I completely healed everything after a week of carnivore.
Right.
And I think that, you know, to some degree, it could be very inspiring, and everything, but it can also be very discouraging for people who have been sick. And when I spoke to Dr. Natasha in our interview, she said it could take years. You know, she says a lot of her clients,
Yeah.
they don't heal right away. It could take a couple years before they fully heal, right? And there's that layering of detox, like you might be detoxing oxalates or candida or mercury or whatever, and it could really take a long time to heal from all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you know, but I mean, it's every person's very bio individual, so you never know. But
Hmm.
I would say, you know, stay the course, don't be discouraged. I'd say, you know, when I talk to the younger people that I've talked to, and we spoke about this before the interview, but a lot of times they think, you know, why me? Why do I have to deal with this? This is terrible. I hate my life. Like, and I
Yeah.
totally get that. And I totally understand that. I think that one thing that I find so inspiring about you is that you're like, there's a lot of good that could come from all this suffering. And there's a real silver lining to this. And can you speak to that a little bit? Because we did speak about that a little bit before, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's very nice of you to say. But I I guess my faith has helped me a lot in that aspect through all of this suffering. It's been a big anchor for me and just a refuge really for me through this. But I would say I think hope when you're suffering in such an indescribable way is everything. Like and it's hard when doctors tell you you have an incurable disease or you're never going to get better. And things like that, it's hard to keep hope, but I always kind of had that feeling like our bodies have this innate ability to heal, and I think the hardest part about that is it looks different for everyone, and it's hard to access. It takes a lot of hard work, but I think for I'm not going to ever say all people, because I don't want to, there's probably some people that this wouldn't work for, but I think for most people, healing is possible, and it's just something that you really have to work hard for and to figure out what works for you, because what works for me may not work for you, but I've kind of come to at least the opinion that animal based is very healing for most or all people potentially. So that's a concept that I have come to feel pretty strongly about, which is surprising because I never liked eating meat growing up. I never,
Mhm.
um, I went vegetarian for a little while, all those things, but I think that this way of eating can be very healing for most. And it's just something that I think, especially in the complex cases, it's not going to go away overnight, and it's going to be a long process, and sometimes you might even get worse before you get better, and that's a hard thing to push through, right? Like it's but yeah, I just think hope is everything in a situation like this. It's I've always liked to believe that there's a way to heal, and um I guess overall I'm thankful that I have learned this, because this is something that I can obviously, hopefully, I can get the sick years out of the way, and I can, once I heal, I can live a great life, up until my 90s, I'll be healthy, and I mean, that's the hope, right? But I think it's something that I can pass down to hopefully benefit if I ever have kids, something that I can, uh, pass down to them, just the importance of nutrition and like fueling our bodies properly, because it's something that I never really thought was important. Even if you asked me like a couple of years ago, like, do you think nutrition plays a role in like why you got sick, or like, do you think that it affects your health? And I would say, probably not really. But now I'm like, no, like it's essential. Like it's
Yeah,
everything.
it's almost everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think coming from somebody who's so young like yourself, it to some degree it's really heartbreaking to see you have to suffer like that. I hate to see that. I sort of imagine myself in my 20s and having to go through that. And I don't think I would have been as strong as you are and as smart as you are for going the path that you're going down. Um, but I think that it's like I said before, it's such a huge blessing that this has happened to you in a way,
Yeah.
right? Um,
I agree. I think I mean, it helps you to become so much more compassionate too. Like it's like I never even knew this type of suffering existed
yeah,
before going through it. And now that I see it, I'm just it's all I want to do is just encourage and help others that have to go through similar things, just because it's just indescribably difficult. And if I can help others just feel a little bit less alone, then
yeah,
I think it's all worth it, right?
exactly. And it gives you that sense of purpose, which is so important to everyone, right? And gives your life a lot more meaning. And I think that also just the discipline of having to maintain a diet, even without being sick. Like I have to hand it to the people that are just doing this for weight loss or doing it because they want like a six pack or something like that. If you could do
Yeah,
it for those reasons, like God bless you in a way, even though those
right.
people kind of annoy me sometimes, but right, it's like God bless you, man. If you're doing this just for a six pack and you could be this disciplined, it's not easy being this disciplined.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think like, and you understand this too because of what you've been through. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about your story yet, but I know that you have been through awful things.
Yes.
And so it's easier to do something like this when you go through something like that, just because you're like, well, I'm willing to do anything. Like anything is easier than what I've been through. And so it's just like, yeah, like I only eat beef and salt, like, but it's hard, but like
Yeah.
nothing's harder than being severely ill and
Exactly.
missing out on life.
Yeah. I think what really changed things for me is when I had kids, I think like obviously, in any situation, it prompt change. If you're really ill like that, you'd do anything, right? But
Right.
I just remember I was at the park one day with my daughter and I could barely stand up. I was so sick and I was pushing her on the swing and I just couldn't push her anymore. And she started crying because I couldn't push her on the swing and I just broke down and I was,
Oh,
I was like, I need to change something here. I don't care what
yeah.
I do. I'll do whatever it takes. That moment, sort of that light bulb went off in my head, and then I had my son come this past year and I sort of doubled down on that. I was just like, I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I'll eat, snakes. I'll eat, here I am eating these weird organs. I never thought I'd eat like brain and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm eating all kinds of things I never thought I'd eat before. But it's great. I think like there is that social stigma to it that, all my friends kind of think I'm a weirdo and you go out to eat at a restaurant or it's very strange to people, this diet. And I find that odd because on a, veganism is so socially acceptable now,
Right.
it
Right.
if you're vegan, people don't think twice about it,
Yeah.
which is strange because evolutionarily speaking, it's not natural to our
Yeah.
diet. Whereas carnivory is much more relevant
Yeah.
to our ancestral diets, right? So
Absolutely.
so I'm just hoping by at some point that people will get sort of past this ideological propaganda against meat in terms of like the environment and
Yeah.
animal rights and all this stuff. And because I think a lot of that's misguided, but and I think I'm really
Absolutely.
hoping at some point people will see this as a just another diet like anything else. And in fact, it being a very healthy diet, especially compared
Yeah.
to this processed junk that we're eating and that we've grown up with, right? It's been indoctrinated
Hmm.
this.
Well, I think one of the problems too is they're pushing the idea that red meat is linked to chronic diseases like autoimmune diseases or cancer. When you think about it, outside of the carnivore community, like who's eating a lot of red meat and what else are they eating with it?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
it's, the milkshakes, the fries, the bun, the sauces,
Yeah.
everything
Don't blame
with,
the burger, blame the bun.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. There's so many confounders in there in terms of like healthy user bias or unhealthy user bias and all sorts of things that play a role there. And they really don't, every doctor I've been to, they say the same thing to me. Oh, you don't want to be eating that red meat. That's a bad terror, the worst diet you could be on because you'll get colon cancer or whatever else. And I just kind of sit there, I'll just kind of nod my head. Sure. Yep. I don't try to
Yeah.
argue it because people are so entrenched in this matrix like world that's been built for them that they should be eating their grains and so on and stay away from red meat, that
Yeah.
there's no point in trying to convince people
Yeah.
who
Yeah,
aren't.
well, I think it also like says something about our society that like if you tell someone that you ate an organ or you made homemade bone broth, that they're like, oh, that's gross. The reaction is like, wow, we're so far removed from our food. And like, I mean, the nose to tail aspect, I mean, obviously it's something that's not necessary for everyone, but it can be very beneficial for a lot of carnivores to eat nose to tail. And
Mhm.
like, I think, you know, out in nature, obviously a lot of animals go straight for the organs, right? When they kill their prey, and it's just like actually the organs are extremely nutrient dense and good for us. Like it shouldn't be like a gross or a weird
Yeah.
concept. but it was to me. I mean, I never ate anything like that growing up, and like the idea of it freaked me out. So it's just something that you kind of slowly get used to, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that also it's more appropriate, in terms of honoring that animal, in terms of eating
Yeah,
nose to.
yeah.
I hate to say nose to tail. I never like that term. Brain to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
brain
I
to.
got you.
I don't know, but anyway, but like in terms of wasting all the organs and everything seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Eating muscle meat, but
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that it's I mean, it's not only for the nutritional benefits, but yeah, to honor the animal and to make the most of their life.
yeah, exactly. But I could say that you know, it's really hard. This diet is not as easy as a lot of people make it out to be,
Yeah.
especially when you're sick. There could be a lot of pitfalls to diet, especially coming from an aspect where you're so nutritionally deficient. So that's why I really do advocate for eating a lot of organ meat,
Yeah.
the nutritional component to it. Um, but I think, from speaking to you and just from my own experience, a lot of people do seem to be going in the right direction, which is great. I'm really hoping you'll join me on the Paleo Medicina PK. Let's do this. But so where are you hoping to go from here in terms of, your YouTube channel and all that stuff? I know you just started that. Are you kind of looking to teach people about the diet or healing or?
Yeah, so I actually have been sharing my chronic illness journey on YouTube on a different channel
Oh,
for a couple of years now.
oh, okay.
Um,
Where have I been?
and
Okay.
yeah, so I've shared a lot on there, and but I kind of felt like I wanted to create a a, a whole separate channel or community just focused on the carnivore and meat-based way of eating, and just share my journey to hopefully healing through that lens, just because I didn't want to bombard everybody with all the carnivore content that I wanted to be sharing.
What is your other channel
But
mostly about though? Like, what are your videos to?
I've shared kind of just like anywhere from like surgery vlogs way back when I was having neurosurgeries
Oh, okay.
to treatments I've tried to
Okay.
just thoughts on living with chronic illness, that sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I just hope to just share my story and experience with it and encourage other people. I don't ever want to convince other people tr- to try to do something like that's not really in my nature, but I hope that through sharing it can be helpful for others, and it's something that I've become really passionate about, just sharing this way of eating. So I hope I can share like recipes, tips and tricks, and just all things carnivore and lion diet related on my channel, and just see where it goes from there. We'll see. You never know where life's gonna take you. So
Yeah, I really like this community approach, and I'd really like to, stay in touch with you and see if we could like learn from each other and see if we could find an appropriate diet to help heal
yeah,
ourselves the most, right? And uh,
absolutely.
yeah, and I'm really hoping everyone will sort of get on board with this and at least give it a try at some point. I'm
Yeah,
trying to convince. I see I'm the opposite of you. I really try to convince people as much as possible to do this, but sometimes it's a bit of a lost cause. Um,
yeah,
but it's I just really like this community feel for people who are really trying to heal themselves. There isn't any like ulterior motives or anything like that. We just want to heal ourselves and get better and help other people. And um,
yeah, for sure. And I think
I think what you're
with
doing.
like you and me, we both kind of started like underweight as well too. So that was something that I was like, nobody's sharing about this, that like
Yeah.
carnivore is not only a weight loss diet, like you
Mhm.
can gain weight on it, you can
Yeah.
optimize. It's all about health. I mean, ultimately, like weight is not important unless you're severely underweight or
I,
something. But Obviously
I
it's all
would,
about getting people healthy.
yeah, I would consider myself to be maybe almost severely underweight. I used to be a bodybuilder, believe it or not. Maybe I'll show my next video. I'll show a picture of myself about 6 years. But people can't believe it when they see me now. They're like, "What? This guy, no way was he a bodybuilder." But I've lost about 65 pounds now total from where
Wow.
I was at 5 years ago. So, but at this point now, it's not about vanity for me. I couldn't care less about that, how I look. I've lost
Right.
a lot of my hair, I've lost all my weight, I've lost all my muscle, whatever. Now it's like about surviving. Now it's about, you know, um, just again getting better for myself and my family. And
Yeah.
I
Getting back to living life,
I
enjoying
couldn't give a
life.
shit, and I think the thing is that's so beautiful about this, Rachel, and I think you'll see this, especially as you keep healing. And maybe you do see this sometimes, but when you do get those windows of like really good days, I'm starting for the first time in years to get windows where I feel amazing some days. And I'm
Yeah.
listening to music, and like listening to music, looking at the sky is like different for me. Like the blue is like a different shade. I know it's
Yeah.
so cheesy, but
Yeah.
the blue is a different shade of blue. And I'm just looking at stuff around me and I'm just like, it's almost like you see those like old people, you see like really old people, they're in their 80s and they're like really looking at gardens, as if it's something really cool. And I'd always be
Yeah.
like, why do old people like to look at gardens so much? I mean, what's so special about a garden? But that's what's happening to me now. Maybe it's because I'm becoming really old, but I look at some daisies now and I'm like, wow, those are really special daisies. This is really cool.
Yeah.
And I have this passion for stuff that I haven't had in probably like decades, even before I got sick, because I
Yeah.
appreciate my feeling good so much now. It's just so
Yeah.
special. If I can make
It
this
it
happen for me on a constant basis, life would just be golden. Like a
yeah.
nuclear bomb could go off beside my house and I'd be just living in the clouds. It'd be awesome. So
Yeah. It definitely brings a whole new meaning. I For the first time in like years, I drove again a couple months ago,
yeah,
and it was just like the greatest feeling. But it's
yeah,
it's silly, I'm like in my 20s. It should be a totally normal thing, but it wasn't. It's something that I really missed out on. And even the little things like I can cook my own meals now. I couldn't do that for years.
mhm.
And it's just the simple things that just you hope to never take for granted again.
Yeah, even just spending more than an hour out of bed during the day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those baby steps. And one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, man, I've been out of bed for 4 hours. This is awesome. Right. So these
Yeah.
little things that like healthy people just might take for granted. They wouldn't
Yeah.
notice you've been sick for so long and are able to make these baby steps. It's just so magical. And I just really want everybody to see that, and I'm sure that you're on the right path and you're going to see this. And um, I really like to encourage younger people, especially. I hate to sound like that old man who's like trying to tell people what to do or, try to be super encouraging or whatever. But it's really important for me that people don't give up hope and they keep trying. And because I have seen the most miraculous discovery or recoveries in the last like years. I've really been doing this. And I really believe that if everybody sticks to it, that everybody will get better, so
Yeah,
anyway,
there's always hope.
exactly. Yeah. So it's been awesome speaking to you, Rachel. I'm really hoping that we can have another conversation like this. I really enjoyed talking to you, and
Yeah, absolutely.
nice talking to,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, it's nice talking to people you could relate to. And right. So
For sure.
can we just find out where we could find you on YouTube and Instagram before we go?
Yes, absolutely. So on YouTube, I'm Ribeye Rach or Rachel Elizabeth for my chronic illness related journey. And then Instagram is just at Ribeye Rach. So,
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. If you've made it all the way to the end, which probably a lot of you don't, because never makes it right to the end. But if you have made it all this way, then please subscribe to my channel. It would mean a lot. And I hopefully I'm going to have some more videos for you coming up. So thanks so much, Rachel, and talk to
awesome.
you soon.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.